So this is like an entry lesson into artificial intelligence. You've been following with the earlier lessons. You probably have some of this done, but I'll go through it as if it was just a beginning lessons also. So to get started, of course, you're going to create a new project, a 3D URP project. So make sure you choose 3D URP in your selection from the Unity Hub. And once you open your project, you need to make sure you need to go get the from the package manager. You need AI navigation and the input system. So AI navigation, input system, you can get those, of course, from the registry. Make sure they're installed. And then we also found a couple of times we need to install the input system a couple times. Even though it said it was installed and stuff, it didn't really activate. So sometimes we had to remove it and reinstall it. Sometimes when you close the project, it would then come up and then install. So you may have to do that. I went and got a asset from the Unity Asset Store. You don't need any of this if you don't want to, but we're actually trying to do a few scenes now. So I went and got a castle from the Unity Asset Store, free castle, and I can't remember exactly which one it was, but it also came with the standard assets, which is pretty nice because that's from 2019. That was when we used to do Ethan running around. So, but you can get any asset you want. But this is the castle scene, and it's a nice sample scene with this inside it. So once you do that, you're going to need to create a nav mesh surface. Let me close mine. So a nav mesh surface, which is game object, and it may be AI may be down at the bottom at first when you first start using it, but a nav mesh surface. So and then make sure it's named humanoid. We're going to fool around with this some as you do further on lessons. What I found is if you have an enemy and a player, you can use humanoid for both. If you want to create two nav mesh surfaces, humanoid and maybe enemy, then you need to have the agents for both too. But anyway, so once you do that, make sure you bake it. So you're going to bake your surface down here once you create the surface. And then I just used a capsule for my player. So game object, 3D object, capsule. I'm probably going to get a regular player when this thing goes over with. But anyway, that's what I used. And on the capsule, I need to create a nav mesh agent. So you can do it here too. So I created nav mesh agent and humanoid for my player. And I also had to put the input system in. So that's down here too. Add component, player input. Okay. Once you put the player input in, you need to put input actions inside here. So it's going to have a button down here that says create. And when you create, you're going to type in input actions. Just type it into the slot there. Notice it's one word, input actions, no space in between. So create and then just type it the little lever input actions, hit enter, and it should look like this when you're done. Okay, and then for my enemy, originally I just had like something moving around there, but I went online and got a ghost from the asset store too. And I took off the script and I took off a bunch of other stuff because it wasn't working. So, and then again, created a nav mesh agent and make sure it's humanoid on this one too. So in order to get the, let's see, what play my game. We want our enemy to start tracking down our player. So it's moving towards it. So the way we do that is we have a script, and it is called, I think it's called nav. So make sure when you type it, you put the Unity Engine AI, add that to your script, and then it's pretty simple, just two variables. And when it starts, we want it to get the component nav mesh agent so it knows where the player is, and then it's going to just move towards the player as the game goes in there. So, we're using a private agent inside there, so we have to fulfill that slot. So when you put that on your enemy, it goes on your enemy. Make sure you come and drop your player into that slot so it knows what it's tracking. So you're going to drag your player in right there. Okay. On the player itself, we're going to have a player move script. And remember, put your input system in. You got to type this in manually. We've got our variables, float, speed, rigid body, and the movement. And when the game starts, we're going to go ahead and get the rigid body, get the physics on the player. And then we have an on move function since we're using the new input system. So we're going to designate two variables for the X and Y movement, and the Y, of course, is going forwards and backwards. And then for the movement, I'm using fixed update. Make sure you spell this right. Some of my students didn't spell it right. And now we're using these two variables down here. Notice even though it says Y, of course, because of 3D space, it's actually the Z movement. There is no Y. We're not going up or down. And so this is my movement script. You don't have to use it, but that's mine. And then for my camera, I want my camera to follow my player. So simple camera controller script. Just again, like the nav script, we're just getting the player position, and then we're going to track it. Camera's just going to track and move along with it. Once you set the camera where you want, it will follow it as it moves. And of course, on your camera, we have that agent spot, so you're going to go ahead and drag your player in again. So we're going to fill that variable that we left open, and like a game object, and we're going to fill it inside there. So once you start your game, it should be moving towards your player as you move. I'm going to probably see if I can get a script to open up this. Yes, and I got this terrain. So it's pretty cool because it's like we used to have with Ethan there. But I'm probably going to have to add a little jump to my player. And maybe some more speed. So that I don't get stuck in these places. 2 is too slow, and I may need to jump out of some of these crevices I created. Unless I can just move through them. No, the speed will do it. And of course you can just open this door by just rotating it. And you can control the speed. So if we look at our nav mesh agent, for our ghost, we can control that speed. I'm only moving at 1. I think 3.5 is what it comes at initially. So I just move it 1. You can change that speed, the nav mesh agent here. Make sure they're both humanoid. So if you bake your nav mesh surface, you may need to bake it a couple times as you make changes. The problem I've seen is make sure your player and enemy or whatever you have in here are both humanoid. If they're not, and it's different, it's not going to work unless you create two nav mesh surfaces, and I'm not doing it in this particular one. And then, of course, your player also is humanoid. Make sure you or your students do not delete this. Keep that inside there. So bake it, and initially your enemy should start following your player. And we're going to start creating some obstacles inside here. There also, we're going to be doing a nav mesh modifier, which means that you can then stop the enemy from going to certain places or the player. So that would be nav mesh modifier volume. I had it in my other game, but I haven't put it in this one yet. So anyway, give it a try. Email if you have any problems, and see what you can put together. Bring in any object you want, scene you want, and make sure if you bring in some kind of enemy or something that doesn't have a script, or you remove it.